Well, thank you, everyone. This will be approximately about a 45-minute workshop. We're not going to bore you to death with too many slides. We are going to try to get to some content of what the key elements are of the Microsoft Premium 365 and how you can do more with less. My name is David Hodgson. I'm the founder and CEO at PCG. We have Patrick Nichols from PCG, one of our level 3 engineers and an expert in the Microsoft 365 platform. And we're very blessed today to have from Pax8, who is our key Microsoft partner, Walker Rowe, joining us from the wonderful state of Colorado. Good morning, Walker.
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here.
Great, thanks. I'll be seeing you. You'll be at Pax8 Beyond, right?
This year, no.
Oh, I'll miss you on that one. All right, next slide, please. So our agenda, we just want to understand the feature and benefits of the 365 Premium platform. Most clients and prospects are definitely knowing what's going on with Microsoft 365. That product actually took off about in 2011 and 12 and kind of moved our on-premise Exchange servers to the cloud. And people slowly adopted moving to what's known as the Microsoft Basic, which is email only, then to the standard. But really, we're going to focus today on the premium, and that is by far the hottest SKU for Microsoft. It's the #1 here at PCG, and we're going to go about some of the benefits there for you. We'll talk about why and where the premium package should be deployed. Some of the biggest things why people are getting it is management and security. And those are all things as business owners. We want to manage our users, what they're doing, and we also want to know that we're secure with what we're doing. We'll do a demo of the 365 Premium solution. Everything changed back in 2000, 2001 with the pandemic. So employees now, in the old days, we had everyone working in one roof under all the walls of one firewall, but now we have everyone working in multiple places, unknown locations with their current network, unknown if they're using a company-owned asset. And so we kind of lost some of the controls, what you're used to in the office. And that concerned a lot of people, including me. So, the pandemic changed everything. I think we've all, in the old days, I never wanted someone to hire remotely and work remotely, but we as employers need to give employees flexibility, and the remote workforce is here to stay. And that's why we'll talk about the 365 Premium and how that will help there.
Dave, can we jump in with a quick poll here?
We love polling questions, Wendy. So we would like to at least get our feedback to see where the audience at, and we can always move our some of our content that way. So how important is data security in your organization?
And this is not a trick question.
We have
And you can continue on, Dave, while folks are answering, and we'll just show the results.
Well, at least it's overwhelming. That's about 90% saying it's very important. Okay. So your employees are the driving force of your company's progress. So you want your people to be passionate. Most organizations that we deal with are the small to medium. They typically have about 5 to 100 seats. And we need to give them the needed security in order for you to collaborate and work from anywhere and anytime. And I really want to focus that anytime that a lot of people, especially after the pandemic, including here at PCG, stay-at-home moms, the way the schools were shut down, a lot of people couldn't do their work during normal hours. So they had to do it after hours. And you need to think about after hours, where are the controls, the management, what's that person doing? Are they sitting behind the firewall? So working anywhere and anytime is an extremely important part for us at PCG, and I'm assuming for you guys as well. So our goal is to enable real-time collaboration from virtual anywhere. And we all know today you can get your email on your phone, your tablet, you can log in at a kiosk at a hotel, you have the ability at your work machine, but the key is no matter where you're logging in, we want to make sure that access to that data is secure. But the goal is to allow you to be anywhere, anytime, and the ability to collaborate with your team. I know a lot of time I'm working with my team on projects after hours on weekends, and it's nice to know that we're able to do that in a secure fashion. So the plans that we're most accustomed to for Microsoft is the basic. So that is going to include your email, your access to Microsoft Teams, your access to SharePoint, and to OneDrive. I still get a lot of questions on the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive. I keep it simple. OneDrive will be for your personal stuff. SharePoint will be for your company, the ability to lock it down more, files, permissions. That should be just like your old days in the file server, the old share. Think of SharePoint as that common share. Your OneDrive could be your personal photos, information that you're doing, but make sure both those are being backed up. Most people, they used to install the Microsoft Office on the desktop, but now the standard includes not only what's in the basic, the email, but you have your standard portfolio of the Microsoft Office suite, Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Publisher, and Access. That's the big one there. What we're really focusing on today is not only what basic and standard give you, but really honing in on the products on that second line item there. We're going to talk about that Intune, the Azure protection, what Defender does for added protection, conditional access, who has access to what, and the ability to do your Windows Virtual Desktop. So the Microsoft Premium, from a small business, you have all of these features and benefits into this one product. So as your company grows, wants to go more cloud or not have a server on premise, you still need to have these aspects in place, and the premium product will give you every part of that and then some.
Dave, can I jump in one more time? We'd love to ask the question of, speaking of collaboration, which tool in the Microsoft arsenal are folks using the most? So I'm going to launch that now, and if you guys can answer, just give you a couple minutes to answer real quick. And you can keep going, Dave. I'll just keep an eye on this.
Right. Patrick, if you could launch that.
Yeah, I'll share that over for you. Oh, nope, not what I wanted. Shared. There we are.
So this matrix is and Patrick has checked off. So if you just uncheck the basic and the standard, Patrick, just to give him an idea. This tool gives you the ability to, it's very confusing. There are so many products from Microsoft, so many plans, and what we try to do is go through this matrix right here, which is a fantastic matrix, and it easily shows you what you get in each plan. And if you go down a little bit on there, Patrick, on when it starts talking about on the premium, you're going to start seeing when we get down to the security section of what the premium is starting to get for you. You saw the retention, the mobility, and security. So right, that's what today's focus is about, is pretty much the enterprise mobility and security are all the features and benefits a business wants to understand and how you can incorporate that into your business. You're always going to get your email and the Office suite on the other ones, but you really want to hone in on the premium. So if any of our clients need to see this link, we do have that. You can make that request, and happy to send this form, but it's a great way to kind of see exactly what you're getting. And it's not kind of go shopping for a car. You kind of check off what you're looking for. But the information protection is huge. You'll see the Defender from Microsoft in there. So what a fantastic way to see what those products are. All right, thank you, Patrick.
All right.
So I'm going to pass it over to Walker right here to start getting into some of the grit of the premium product. Thank you, Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that what Dave talked about with the new normal and people kind of shifting to this hybrid workforce, a lot more people working remotely now than before, it's opened up a necessity, to his point, to sort of protect things that are not behind the traditional castle and moat that we would think of in an office ecosystem, right? And so Microsoft provides cloud solutions, meaning that the actual hardware is hosted by Microsoft offsite and you're accessing it through your internet connection. So at a very basic level, we think about what, from your perspective, from the customer, the end user perspective, matters. We see that real-time collaboration is important. We need to be able to send files, send messages, share information with people on our team from anywhere, anytime at all. And then on the security side of things, we're seeing an increase in targeted attacks at companies that we would not consider to be one of the traditionally sort of targeted sizes, right? Used to be that you would go online and you would search up like Fortune 500 companies, and if you're a bad actor, you're going to go after those because that's the biggest payoff. But now with the ability for people to sort of rinse and repeat and templatize attack and threat vectors, they can go after anybody and sort of take a shotgun approach. And so what we're seeing as a result of that is things are trickling into the SMB, and they're starting to go after everybody who has a vulnerability. The other thing that we think is important here is the consideration of cost. So how do we actually save overall without having to overinvest in technology? But when you think about Microsoft in the context of your total spend, it's usually sort of a commodity or a non-thinker. You don't think too much about your Microsoft licensing. But because of the hybrid workforce and the idea that all of this data is sort of stored in a place that's not physically tangible on site at the client location, usually. In the case of SharePoint and OneDrive, that is especially true. What we can run into is disparate solutions that are stacked together that overall increase the total cost. And so what we think is really compelling about the business premium SKU is that it's a combination of productivity and security at a price point that makes it very attractive for everybody to adopt. And it's not a significant lift when you look at the total overall spend that you're going to throw at business premium compared to layering on other solutions. And so we kind of hone in a little bit on that on-prem piece and say that the legacy solutions don't really solve the challenges across these three things because we have a lot of limitations. Like you can make it work, obviously, to have a file server on-prem and do shares with people, but that requires a VPN. And so on and so forth. So we continue to sort of make things work. Shift the approach and the mindset here and say, okay, if we're already operating within the cloud ecosystem, and we understand that there are a lot of benefits to that approach, how do we sort of bring up the security side to match the productivity side of the house? And that's the idea behind the business premium product.
And Walker, it's worth noting that the cost is at such a point where it really makes sense, even if you were doing kind of a hybrid deployment
Right.
of wanting to have some of these 365 premium features while still having servers on-prem too.
Very true. Very true. And so everybody uses Office 365. And what I was trying to kind of hint at here is not that you should exclude or set aside, but Patrick exactly right in his line of thinking here. You don't want to set aside everything that's on-prem and say, well, I have servers on-prem, therefore I don't want to think about the Office 365 side. The reality is that it's become so ingrained in the day-to-day operations of businesses to use the services that we're talking about here, which is like your Exchange Online, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, your Teams, that it has become necessary even in sort of a hybrid deployment where you have some stuff on-prem and some stuff up in the cloud to focus on the security side of the house here. Yeah, exactly. So as we've seen sort of the market shift, we see business owners recognize the need to get on modern technology stacks. And the benefits of cloud-based collaboration, productivity, and security have become more important and more prescient, top of mind. And we think that the need has never been greater. It's going to continue to go up over time. So small business owners on the whole understand the need to accelerate their digital transformation. We talk about digital transformation in this sense of getting on the right tools for the most efficient use of this technology that you're interfacing with on a day-to-day basis. We're starting to see more recognition that businesses are vulnerable to attacks like phishing, ransomware. And again, we're starting to see more and more articles pop up in the news where it's not the big culprits, the usual suspects that are getting hit. It's anybody and everybody. And so we're seeing that start to trickle down and become more relevant to everybody who's operating a business in the United States or abroad today. So we also know that you need to conserve cash and be efficient with the use of your technology in order to prepare for potentially uncertain financial times, right? We can never predict the future. And so it's good to have a solid foundation moving into it so that you have good, solid foundation to put your feet on. And that way, whatever happens into the future, you've already had sort of that technology piece ticked off your list, right? So again, on the business premium side, with the right tools that we think we can help you grow your business, the Microsoft 365 solution and sort of in the context of growing your business is just to give you a strong technology that it really does solve all of the challenges that we think the SMB is faced with on a day-to-day basis. And it gives you the tools to go out there and use it to its fullest potential. And in this presentation, I'm going to show you how we've kind of architected that solution and that approach. We think that it's important to be more collaborative and connect your people, secure your business with technology you can trust, and reduce your cost. So these are the three tenets that we're trying to carry through this presentation in the context and the lens of the Microsoft 365 Business Premium product. So again, you're going to see this verbiage quite a bit, but Business Premium, we think of it as a secure, cost-effective, reliable cloud solution for real-time collaboration, secure work from virtually anywhere. What does that actually mean? We mean it's the best, most cost-effective combination of productivity and security, is the very basic way that I would say that. It includes all of the stuff that David mentioned on that previous slide, plus what we call the Enterprise Mobility and Security E3 suite, which is a combination of individual services that we're going to dive into a little bit more in depth in this presentation and break them down for you. But just keep in mind here that when you think Business Premium, it's a combination, it's an inclusion of productivity and security. It's a very fundamental basis. And so these are some of the things that you could use for the Microsoft Business Premium side on the collaboration. It's the focus at the bottom here. Microsoft Teams, cloud storage, think OneDrive, SharePoint, Office applications, everything that you're used to. And then Microsoft Teams, which allows you to chat, call, host online meetings, collaborate real time, as well as file shares. So how do you protect all those things, right? You're using these to actually move your business forward and to continue to foster an atmosphere of collaboration at your company. But what are we going to do to lock them down, right? So that's the questions that we're trying to answer.
Walker, the poll that Wendy proposed here, 42% of you are saying that Teams is your most used 365 application. I would tend to agree. That's definitely my most used one. The best thing about it is that since I'm on the road seeing customers a lot, having the Teams app on my phone, my personal phone, and getting the push notifications. So if somebody has a question, I can answer it really quickly and move on. Whereas, not everybody wants to get a notification for every email on their phone. I'm just not going to be able to get through those. But with that being said, since Teams is my primary communication method with the rest of my team, it's really important to keep that secure.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so here's a nice little marketing term at the top, but we think it's actually very accurate. Microsoft 365 Business Premium delivers on the power of the cloud. So there's three tenets behind this: save cost, increase security confidence, and improve productivity. So when we talk about realizing value here, you could save over 50% as compared to doing third-party add-ons through license consolidation to Microsoft 365, in this case, Business Premium. And this will make, I think, a little bit of sense when we talk about what are the individual core components that are included with the BP or Business Premium product compared to some of the other ones. In terms of realizing value, yeah.
Walker,
Dave,
one thing I've noticed over the last 4 to 5 years, and we've noticed when we meet current and future clients, SharePoint and some of the Microsoft products weren't there 6, 7, 8 years ago. So we're kind of talking about putting everything in one spot. You're right that they might have been using the Google Drive or the Dropbox. But you take all those costs and multiple tenants, and now we're Microsoft's, and you start looking at it, that's where the complexity comes in of where all these 3 or 4 or 5 buckets they're trying to do things. And now that I feel they fixed the Teams, they fixed the SharePoint, that does allow that one single pane of glass to kind of do everything. And I think that's where the huge cost saving is. You're eliminating all those third-party products.
100%. And that's just kind of one of those, we talk about, it's like death by 1,000 cuts in technology sometimes. It's same sort of philosophy that you can apply to personal subscriptions to like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, right? You start just picking these things up and then it's running in the background. You might not use them, right? For example, maybe you don't watch anything on Hulu, but you're still paying for it. And it's the same idea with your sort of Dropbox and even sometimes with on-prem architecture. It depends on when it was set up and who's actually accessing it. But in technology, it's important to cut the bloat and trim the fat, right? Because sometimes these solutions are just picked up because at the time there was a need for it. But to Dave's point, now the SharePoint OneDrive is caught up and it's sort of removed the necessity for something like a Dropbox for file share, because now we could do it directly out of your SharePoint or your OneDrive, right? And I guess one of the things that I want to stay on this slide for a second, don't want to read the bullet points like word for word, But I think it's important to think about, in terms of each of these individual 3 tenets of saving cost, improving security confidence, and improving productivity. What are we actually looking at here? It's sort of collapsing line items and giving you a solution that ticks all the boxes. It does all the things that we require in the modern age of cloud hosted data and data storage, but it also makes it easier from the end user perspective. So when we talk about saving costs, we also have sort of the time factored into that, right? How much time does it take you to memorize passwords for multiple different services? Would it be nice if you had just a single sign-on where you sign in with your Microsoft account, and now your third-party applications and Microsoft native applications are sort of caught by that sign-in session? So now you don't have to remember passwords for each individual application that you go into, right? So that falls under here. And just reducing complexity in terms of the management of licensing and sort of your day-to-day ops. What do we talk about really in terms of that? We're sort of trying to architect a talk track here that sort of focuses on, instead of saying, okay, well, I want email encryption, let's pick up Azure Information Protection. I want identity management, let's pick up Entra ID. Well, people are using BYOD. That's a really popular term because it's a popular practice. And so people using personal devices to access company data, how are we going to lock that down? Now we're looking at maybe IBM Mass 360 for mobile device management or something like that, right? You parcel each of those out, and it's $3 here and $6 here and $8 there, and pretty quickly we have maybe $20 in add-ons just to do the same thing that Business Premium does. And so the concept here is to say, if you just move up into a package that includes everything that we're talking about, it's all Microsoft native, so that helps with the collaboration in terms of everything being on the same architecture on the back end. But also from the end user perspective, it reduces the amount of complexity that you have because you're not having to go to multiple services just to get through your day. You can stay in the Microsoft world. It makes it a lot easier for you. And I don't think that we spent a lot of time on this today, but it's important to talk about security breaches and what kind of impact that can have on your business. We look at this is and of course I'm gonna probably get the numbers wrong, but they went out and polled a bunch of companies in the US and used this for cybersecurity, and it was somewhere on the realm of like 60% of people that were surveyed said that they were too small to be targeted for some sort of an attack, right? And so I hate to like pick that apart, but I really do think that it's important to realize that any company, it doesn't really matter what the size is. It's sort of like when you look at total metrics and is it total or is it per capita? When we talk about businesses, it's all per capita. And I think that that's an important thing to consider, because if you're a Fortune 500 company, you lose your data and it gets locked down or somebody steals it, right? And they hold it ransom. That's going to tank a $50 million company. But if you're a $500,000 a year company in terms of revenue, it could still tank you, right? And so it's really important to consider the fact that if you have a data breach, what's your recovery plan? What's your prevention plan for that data breach in the first place? So we almost have to say, like in the context of, Dave and team, they are in it, as an MSP, they sit on both sides. They try to make sure it doesn't happen to you, and then they try to give you a contingency plan for if it does happen. But if we sort of throw that all to the wind, then you leave yourself vulnerable potentially to run into something that could close your business. And that is something we do not want to have happen, right? And I hate to be so like strong coming in on that, but it does happen. I see it sitting at the distribution level. Sometimes I get that email, hey, my customer was hit and they're going out of business and we need to cancel their licenses. What are our options? And that's not an email that I ever want to see, because I know that people's livelihoods are behind that, right? And so I think that just in the context of what we're spending on IT, I think it's important to be cognizant of the potential risk, right?
Walker,
Not
while
let
we're
it ruin
doing that, we always kind of, during our discussions with our clients, kind of that business, you hit out the business continuity plan. Is we always talk about having insurance, or you have flood insurance or fire insurance, because there's nothing worse than something actually happen. And if something's not in place, you're just devastated. And we're
Right.
constantly preaching about having a cybersecurity insurance policy in place and the certain things. And actually, if an event happens, this is what we do when you don't panic, because the media is going to be on it. You can have potentially your company reputation, your users, an email went out to all of your clients and vendors. So that stuff is happening. It's happening to a lot of us here locally. We're hearing the local stories. So to your point, Walker, is you do everything you can to prevent it. There's still nothing saying it's going to it still can happen, but what are you going to do if it happens? And I think that's one thing, you know, if I'm going to say anything, have a plan. If something happens, have a plan.
Exactly.
And
You know,
can I jump in one more time here? Just thinking about BYOD, you know, bring your own device, and you know, back in the aughts, we used to call them road warriors. You know, all the sales guys on with their Blackberries and whatnot. Just going to launch a poll right now and thinking about whether it's your personal or work devices on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being yes, I am concerned and I care deeply, versus 1, nope, not a problem. Just give us a number rating on how you feel, either whether it's your own personal or professional devices or it's that of your employees. Where do you fall on those devices and how you manage them? And I'll leave that open for a couple minutes. Sorry, Walker.
no, good place for it.
Can we go to the next slide, Patrick?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So as we get into these individual services, you know, we talk about what are the actual sort of levers or the components that enable the business premium to be a combination of productivity and security. So Microsoft Entra ID is a rebrand. If anybody on the meeting here has been around in the technology space, sort of, you know, by osmosis, has heard the term Azure Active Directory or has an Active Directory server on-prem, you're going to be familiar with that nomenclature. Now think Entra ID is the same. It's a rebrand of Azure Active Directory. So just get that out of the way at the start here. But what that enables you to turn on by having a subscription for that at the P1 level, which is what Business Premium comes with, is conditional access identity management, mobile device management, so this is BYOD specific, or company-owned devices. There's 2 different ways to enroll a device and 2 different ways to apply policies. Fully managed or partially managed is kind of the way I think about it. And then identity access. So identity access in the context of this is the right person able to access the right resources? And when we did the Copilot webinar, if anybody on here was on that, and this is just a quick aside, you know, one of the things we talk about is data hygiene. It's relevant in general, right? Especially if you're going to set something like AI loose in your environment. But in the context of this, we want to make sure that if somebody was to steal a set of credentials from, for example, a sales guy, maybe he's on the road using Teams on his phone, somebody comes through and sends a message that looks like it's from somebody on his team, says, hey, I need you to sign into your Microsoft account and change a couple settings for me. A fairly innocuous request, and maybe it's a little out of pocket for a sales guy to do that, but if he has the permissions, sure, why not? That person goes to the landing page, puts in their email, puts in their password, says password's incorrect. So they're like, well, that's weird, but whatever. This is a real example of something that happened to one of my customers. And then later, come to find out that that was a fake landing page for Microsoft. It was a 0 instead of an O for Microsoft.com. Somebody had spoofed it. And now their credentials were in the hands of somebody who was using it to try to get documents out of that organization. And so for identity management and identity access, 2 things. One is this person in this example was a sales guy, so he should not have had access to things like payroll information, employee rosters, financial statements for the company. But because there was no data security groups and access controls in play, he was in this example, and he was able to get, this bad actor was able to go through and get all of these documents that he really should have never had access to in the first place. But the other thing is identity management and multi-factor authentication. So we are able to, from a technology perspective, see where a person is signing in from and what they're going and doing through audit logs. And so there's a need sort of for eyes and visibility into that, but also, so it's like the how do we prevent it, and then also how do we see what happened after the fact, right? And so this bridges the gap, this solution specifically between those 2 things, and provides that identity control and that restriction on what sort of access a user has within a tenant and the information that's stored within that. And then on the Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, sorry. I just posted a question that came in, somewhat
Yep.
MDM related. How do I force people, my employees, to enroll their devices? Is there a good answer to that?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So this is something that I've been advocating for with some of my clients recently, is forcing conditional access policies, policies that control everything from where people can connect, how they can, what devices they can connect from, and how often they're prompted for things like multi-factor authentication. But with that, on the topic of what devices can connect, um, we've got an internal policy here that in order for me as an administrator of our 365 tenant, in order to access the portal and in my administrator account, I need to be on a device that is uh, joined to Microsoft's Entra ID. So it controls the devices that can connect to it, so that if somebody somehow gets my administrator credentials and also has found a way around my multi-factor authentication, they still need to have a physical device that's already been enrolled in our Intune setup.
Yep. And then on actually like forcing a device to enroll, you can do that from your centrally managed Intune admin center.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to have eyes on the device, and that's another component of this, right? So you can get all of the information that you need, and then you just let it back loose. It's not like one of those scenarios where the device has to come in every month for a sync or to, reset it up. The beauty of all these solutions is it gives you that single pane of glass across your entire organization. From a management and enrollment perspective, you can do it all remote. So hopefully that's a decent answer there. The step-by-step is convoluted, but we could run through it. If people want a follow-up on that, just drop it back in the questions and we can dive a little bit deeper into it. It's probably like 3 minutes of me talking. Well, and Patrick for that matter. But anyway, just to hit on some of the other Intune stuff here. So BYOD, obviously we talked about that quite a bit, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. Now, really, where I think is the 2 points at the top here, I think are the most relevant to the Intune conversation. BYOD, you're bringing a personal device. Maybe you want to check your Teams or you want to check your email, or maybe you have a file that you're working on that you want to bring onto a personal device. The Intune product allows you to containerize company data on personal devices. And what I mean by that is, you think about like a traditional old school server, it was a device that could run one process at a time. And then we got into like Hyper-V, and now you could have one server run multiple functions, right? And so similar idea here. In Intune, you're able to have your personal device with your personal photos and email and all of the stuff that you use your smartphone for. But when it's enrolled in Intune, you're also able to access company resources, email, Teams chats, files in a way that doesn't bleed over into your personal storage. If you were to, for example, wipe the device was lost, the employee quits, whatever, you don't want to remove everything in terms of your personal information, your photos and files and all that off the device, but you do want to get rid of all that company data on the device. So Intune is unique in the sense that it allows you to containerize and selectively wipe company data from personal devices. And I think that that's important to mention because I'm somebody who is in technology, but I'm also a little suspicious of it. Yeah, I think a healthy level, right? And I think it's important to reinforce this. If you're using the Intune product, it really does protect your personal information on your personal device, but allows you to be more productive in the field. To Dave's point, people are not working the standard 9 to 5 all the time anymore, right? I'm an example of that. I have a child at home and my wife and I both work full time. So how do we make it work? Sometimes I have to do things after hours and usually that's at my house, but sometimes it's not. We might be out at dinner and somebody sends me something and it's like, well, I really need to follow up on that. So I'm also a user of the Intune product. And I think that the real world application of it is very tangible. And there's a lot of value that's brought to the table by being able to do that in a way that's easy. You know, it's not really cumbersome for me to do that, right? It allows you to move away from or integrate with on-premise servers. So we talked a little bit about that sort of hybrid setup. There are use cases absolutely where you should have on-prem architecture. And that could be from compliance, that could be from logistical, maybe that's your preference as a company. And so it gives you the opportunity to move fully onto the cloud or to integrate the cloud with your on-prem so that everything's talking and working together. You know, we sort of talk about technology momentum, and disparate solutions and sort of picking up third parties can result in a situation where you're going in multiple directions with your technology approach. And so the idea here is to push everything in the same direction to continue to build what we call technology momentum at Pax8, or at least that's the term that I use, which is that everything is moving towards the same goal, which is the goals of the company. Autopilot is a really cool feature, and I'll touch on that very briefly. But Autopilot allows you to manage the applications on a device before you actually sign on for the first time. And that's something that PCG can dive into with y'all. But it's really cool because it allows you to just pack and ship devices directly from manufacturer to client site. And then you don't have to do the traditional sort of golden image. It's from a licensing perspective, Business Premium supports it. So if you guys are curious about that, ask your team for at PCG.
Yeah.
And you can also control your applications.
And Walker, with that, so not only with Autopilot for the company devices that are shipped, I mean, maybe it's even directly to a remote employee, but through the Intune process, there's also the ability to connect that with either a managed Google Play Store or the Apple Business Manager and allow you to publish apps that, again, if they're accessing company data, you're going to want to be able to control the manner in which your users connect to that. And so you can do everything from purchase apps for them to allow them to access to what we call the company portal app, and download that software for themselves on their own devices or on company devices.
Yeah, exactly.
And guys, I just shared another question. It's Intune related, but it almost sounds kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Patrick, in terms of mapping. Can one of you guys take this one? If Intune replaces our on-prem server domain control, what about mapped drivers, printers that I have group policies mapped to currently?
Yeah, so the lift to go from an on-premise server to an Intune-based setup, it's not insignificant, but all of those features are still there. We're able to deploy them, and we're able to deploy them kind of easier to more devices, especially things like Walker mentioned earlier. Devices aren't going to quote unquote tombstone themselves if they haven't checked in with the server recently. We can control all that through the cloud. You can deploy everything from VPN configurations, applications, printers, even Wi-Fi networks that they're allowed to connect to. You can deploy all of that through the Intune process.
Yeah, and I guess the big picture here too is you would want to like extend your existing on-premises Active Directory and move it into Azure to give you more capabilities in this scenario, that you would allow you to then run like an Active Directory domain service as a domain controller, and you'd run a VPN there. The idea here would be to decommission your on-prem domain controller because you can only have two domain controllers supported in Azure ADDS. So your sort of approach here would be to extend it to Azure, your Active Directory, through a VM, decommission the on-prem domain controller, install Azure AD Connect to sync identities from your on-premise AD to Azure AD, now Entra ID. And then for the map drives and printers, you wouldn't have the same exact functionality, but you would use OneDrive for Business or SharePoint for the file storage and collaboration. And you might want to consider migrating map drives to SharePoint document libraries. And then on the printers, Azure Active Directory, Entra ID, does not natively handle printer mappings via group policy, but what you could use is like Universal Print, which is a Microsoft 365 service, direct IP printing. You could also use, well, I would do one of those two actually. I think Universal Print or direct IP printing would probably be the two that I would recommend. And then as far as like planning for that, you would look at file servers. Do you have anything on-prem? You would want to have everything in one place on the cloud, so SharePoint or OneDrive. Again, SharePoint tenant data, OneDrive personal data. For print servers, Universal Print or direct IP, group policies, you would go to Intune profiles for that. It's the same functionality. It's just instead of using group policy, use Intune. And then make sure that any legacy like line of business applications have compatibility with the Entra AD and Intune services. So that's like kind of a generic roadmap of how you would do something like that. I know that sounded maybe a little bit complicated. It is absolutely supportable. That scenario comes up a lot, and there are ways to do that that are not very, very challenging. It's just going to be a little bit of time on configuration, and having the right licensing is also important. Absolutely. The Defender piece. So, we think about like, what does the average end user interface with? What's your connection from like my bubble, my work from home office bubble to the outside world? Most stuff comes through email, right? Sending, receiving, downloading attachments, sending attachments. Most of the stuff is done through email today when you're collaborating with somebody externally, i.e. outside of your organization. So the Defender product is part of the Business Premium package, and it's called Defender for Office 365 Plan 1 is the technical term. Because like I mentioned at the sort of towards the beginning of this presentation, these can be parceled out into individual services, but Business Premium is a combination of all in a very cost-effective way. So the Defender for Office 365 product specifically focuses on safe links, safe attachments. It's independent, it's cloud-based, and it adds a little layer of security on top of your Exchange Online mailbox. Now, one thing that I think is relevant to mention here is unlike some of the other Defender products, like Defender for Endpoint, this is a non-competitive security product. In that, if you're using another like an MX Redirect security product for email filtering, you are not going to see a competitiveness between the Defender for Office 365 product and that third-party product. Because what it does is sit directly on top of the mailbox itself. And so it doesn't run through one of those it doesn't run through an MX Redirect product.
Like we use Proofpoint there, Walker.
Right, so Proofpoint's a great example. So Proofpoint would filter, rinse it, and then it goes to Exchange Online. Exchange Online is where it hits the Defender product. So it's an extra layer of security. It does not replace, it augments. And what it does is it looks at anything that's coming through, and then it puts it in a sandbox environment. It clicks on the link, so to speak. It doesn't exactly do it this way, but I think this is the best way to think about it. Basically, it lights the fuse of the bomb, blows it up, sees if it was a dud or if it actually was dangerous. If it's dangerous, it flags it. You can set up policies to pull it out of the inbox. By default, it would just flag it and say, hey, we think potentially malicious, something going on here, right? Proofpoint should catch it. But people are getting smarter and smarter in terms of bad actors. And so zero-day attacks sometimes slip through the cracks. Always a recommendation to have that extra layer of security. Again, it's Microsoft native on top of a Microsoft service.
So Walker, on that note, one of the biggest, we always say the biggest vulnerability is the user. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too, which is why, having that extra layer of security is beneficial, is that, I've been communicating with this external person over and over. I've already added them to the safe sender list in Proofpoint. So, it's their emails might be bypassing some of those safety features that once it hits Exchange, getting to that Defender for 365 product, that's hopefully going to, be able to catch anything that I've unknowingly let through. Being that I trust this person generally, but who knows, if their email is compromised, then suddenly I can't trust their links, I can't trust their attachments, anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. It just it guarantees, it gives that peace of mind that whatever you're clicking on is going to be, it's already been filtered through by Microsoft.
Patrick, you ready for our demo?
Yeah. So we're going to go through a pretty pretty quickly here. I don't want to take too much of people's time, but I want to show you a little bit about the Entra ID Admin Center, the Intune Admin Center, and a couple of the things we can do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So, I'm in my Entra ID Admin Center. If you've been in this before, it'll look familiar. I've got one user in here, Han Solo, that I'm concerned about their devices that they're connecting with, where they're signing in from. But, I can come in here, I can view all the users, I can view the sign-in logs, I can see where they're signing in from. Where the premium product really comes into full force is down here in the Protection Center. So I'm going to look at conditional access because I want to see what my policies are, what my trusted locations are, things like that. So I come into conditional access. I'm going to look at my named locations. And so here I've got, one IP range. So, Han's home office is the Mos Eisley Cantina, and I want to allow him to connect there. I do want to require MFA, but maybe a little bit. I don't have to be as strict if he's connecting from the Mos Eisley Cantina, but I do want to block him from ever connecting back to our services if he's ever on the Death Star. So I use those as kind of some satirical examples, but in this case, I've designated a single IP address for the cantina, and I've set a whole country as the Death Star. So the Death Star, in this case, I've gone ahead and said that, yeah, I don't want Han connecting back to 365 if he's ever in Russia. So this is one of those things where it gives you quite a bit of flexibility in what you want to set up. But then I can have to go in and create policies for those locations. And so right here, my top policy is block all access from if any of my users are connecting from the Death Star. But I also have some other policies in here for how often people have to connect with multi-factor authentication, what applications they can connect to, and what devices they have to be connecting from. And we can do different policies for different user groups, for different locations, and for different device types. So that brings us into the Intune Admin Center.
Patrick, question on the MFA. Yeah. So we know that something 6-7 years ago we didn't want to do as an individual, and I think it's almost in my mind, if there's not MFA there, I don't know if I even trust it anymore. But a question's coming up here. A lot of their employees complain about MFA prompts. How do I make it easier for them without sacrificing security?
Yeah, so I like to think about it as different risk levels for user, location, and device. So if we, kind of assign everything a different risk score, say, I think of Han is a low risk user, but he's using his own device, so that's something I trust a little bit less. And then I want to trust even less based on location he's connecting from. So I can say if Han's traveling outside the United States, I want him to get an MFA prompt every 8 hours on his personal device. So to kind of renew that session token and allow us to be sure that it truly is him connecting from that remote location versus if they're connecting in the office. I tend to be a little bit more strict on this, but if it's really a sticking point, if they're in the home office, maybe we say maybe they only have to do an MFA prompt once every 7 days or 30 days, as long as they're connecting from a trusted device and a trusted location. So that's how we think about different levels of security for different people, devices, and locations.
Thank you.
So going into the Intune Admin Center, most of you won't ever have to go in here, but it's nice to know what the capabilities of your IT team are. So in here, I can see that I've got devices that aren't in my compliance policies, and based on that, they may not be able to access, they might not be able to access their email if their device isn't in compliance. So things that we can enforce are, if they're bringing their own cell phone, I want to make sure that all of my colleagues have, at least a 6-digit passcode on their cell phone in order to access their company email on it. Or I want to make sure that they have the devices enrolled in Intune at all before they can access company info. So if I go into my devices here, we're going to talk about 3 different types of devices. So the first 2 are going to be Windows devices. And I can see that Han is the primary user on these 2 devices. Both of them are running Windows. One is designated as personal and one of them is designated as corporate. What gets the corporate designation is when they sign into their device, they're using their 365 username, there's the possibility for a hybrid situation where they're signing in as their on-prem Active Directory user. Either way, that device is company owned. We want to apply a certain set of policies to it versus a personal device, which Han's got a personal laptop that he uses while he's at home, and he goes in and he logs into Outlook on the desktop, and suddenly company information is on that device and could be accessed by anybody that has access to it. So there's a couple things we might want to enforce, things like BitLocker encryption to make sure that if that device is ever stolen, that the company info can't be kind of just ripped right off it. And then also if Han ever leaves the company, I want to be able to remotely wipe any of the company data off that. So if I click into his personal device here, I've got options to wipe it. I can give it a fresh start. So basically wiping the company information off it and allowing it to be used for either re-enrolled but I can also apply different compliance policies. I don't have any set up here for this device, but we can see that we can wipe it right from the 365 Intune Admin Center. And then similarly, I can do the same thing with the corporate device, but the fresh start will actually wipe that device and make it ready for a new employee to start using that. So all they need is their email and their password to their 365 account. To start doing that. Where the MDM really takes off, I think, is the ability to manage iOS, iPadOS, macOS, Android, and Linux devices. We'll probably see less Linux in the small and medium-sized business market, but all of your employees have a smartphone for the most part. Many of them access their company email on it. Some of them access Teams on it. Some of them access the company SharePoint on it. All those devices, we want to be able to control a little bit more. So either you get a rogue employee that leaves, or you might just have a lost device that we want to make sure has all of the data removed. So if I go into my iOS and iPadOS devices, we can see that we've got an iPad that Chewy's been using, and we can go into the iPad. And we get that we get the option to remote lock it. I can retire the device. I can't necessarily. I'm not going to be able to wipe all of their personal information off a personally owned iPad, but it's something where using the Apple Business Manager, I've set up a federation between 365 and the rest of the environment, so they can sign into iCloud with their 365 credentials, and allows them to enroll their device in Intune, because I may put a conditional access policy in place so that they can't access any company data without it being enrolled in Intune. So hopefully that answers the question of how do we force this upon people? Well, you've got to force it through security policies. Walker, did you have any questions or anything to add on?
Somebody, yeah, I'd say somebody asked a question here, which was, does the user have to be logged into Intune for the admin to be able to wipe the company data from a personal device? And so I think that the answer to that is yes, but they don't like log into Intune necessarily. You enroll the device and then it runs in the background. It's sort of like picking up a subscription, right? It's there and it comes into play when you need it. But the end user doesn't have to consciously go to the Intune portal and sign in or anything like that, right? So it's passively working for you in the background. I don't know. Would you agree with that answer, Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, as a business owner, what's your concern for personal devices being used as work devices?
They've always been a concern, Patrick, when you preach, especially from the PC. But I think in today's world, a lot of employees are not embracing to use their personal phone like for MFA. But I think in order for them to be an employee and work and have access to your company data, that's kind of why we kind of have to have these certain policies in place here on the 365 premium that, if they want access, well, we're going to give you the access, but your personal device is a potential risk. So you kind of need to follow these protocols. So I think you do need to have a little more flexibility on especially the phone or potentially tablet. But I'm a very strong believer that any company access from a PC level should not be a personal device. It should be a company owned asset that you can lock it down.
Yeah, and the Intune product allows for that in a couple different methods. But I know, like, I started with PCG 5 years ago, and when I joined, they asked me, "Oh, do you want a company phone, or do you want to use your own one?" And me being me, I didn't want to carry two phones on me. But the understanding is that we've got certain policies in place, and we have to adhere to those for data security reasons. That if company data is going on my phone, I have to be willing to comply with that.
Patrick, a question came up on the Defender for 365. And I think Walker kind of said about the proof point list, like an extra layer that one doesn't necessarily replace the other. But why do I need to run this if I'm already have an antivirus or an EDR in place on my devices?
So I think that's a great question. My biggest thing is that it's running all what we call server side or service side. So if I send a OneDrive link to one of my clients and say, "Hey, upload your documents to this folder so I can grab them. They're too big to be email attachments." I'm suddenly giving external access to a basically the files that are going to be synced to my devices. And if they were to upload a malicious file or program, I wouldn't be necessarily knowing of it until I open that device or open that file on one of my devices. And it really having that extra, I might get a notification saying that one of my tools that I've saved into OneDrive has been removed by OneDrive, but because it sees it as a malicious tool, a lot of IT tools do present that way because I use them in a responsible manner, but somebody else could be using them irresponsibly or maliciously. So knowing that it is kind of a peace of mind thing, saying, "Hey, I'm not interacting with this data every day. This data might not even be downloaded on one of my devices running antivirus or EDR or one of those solutions." I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Walker?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, so like that's a great example because that's a pretty common scenario where, again, we're trying not to go back to this Dropbox methodology of sort of piecemealing third parties. So in the context of uploading a file like that that's too large to be an email attachment, you would send a link to your OneDrive and say, "Hey, please put it here." But you could very easily then have like a Word document. You open it up, oh, it's got a .exe, it's got an executable, it's going to run that now. And in that scenario, it doesn't hit your mailbox, doesn't hit your device itself. It's literally your OneDrive, which is connected to your Microsoft tenant, the Dataverse, or the repository for all the information contained with the company level and your personal files as well. And there's not really a solve for that, right? Except for the Microsoft security product that we're talking about here, which is that Defender for Office 365 kind of Defender suite. So I think that you know, in some cases it's an augmentation, such as email, right? Where you might be using something else on top of the Defender product, or the really Defender sits on top of the other products because they're more purpose built and purpose driven. But in this scenario, you'd be solving for something where you most likely don't have a OneDrive security solution in play. And so this fills that need, it fills that gap and gives you that layer of protection at the cloud level.
I don't know if we, during the slide, just so everyone from a price standpoint, the three packages that we spoke about. So the Microsoft Basic, which is pretty much your email and access to your SharePoint and Teams, is $6 per user on the commit. Then the standard, which most people have, is $12.50, which is your whole Office suite, and then the email component, which is again $12.50 for the commit. The premium moves you to $22, which includes the security, the Intune, the device management, the Defender. Includes your Office suite and your Basic. So let's say if you're 10 users on the standard, you'd be about $122.50 a month. If you move to the premium, you're adding another $100, or you'd be at $220 approximately to get the extra features of the environment. So think about if you had an on-premise server that you'd like to retire, you could have your Active Directory there, your files, your permissions. Now that server capital costs are going to go away, but you're going to incorporate them because you still need to manage your users. You need to manage your devices. You need to protect your data. You need to protect your users, your employees, your reputation. So this whole the Microsoft product there's a lot to it. So it's important as we understand what you're trying to do for an organization that we can say, yes, you are a good fit to potentially retire your server. But a lot of companies can't retire their server because there's a specific on-premise application that really has to be there. And that vendor doesn't have something in the cloud yet. But yes, you can lift your files to SharePoint. Yes, we can move your Active Directory. So there are a lot of things as there's no perfect fork in the road, which was best for you. But I think if we can kind of see what your organization is doing, we can give you the guidance and give you options for that. Any closing remarks, Patrick or Walker?
Dave, while you were talking about numbers, is there any way
Yes.
you could move forward to that, just some of the savings that folks can recognize as far as business benefits? I think it's 22.
Yeah, it's $22, $22.50.
No, 20, slide 22, sorry. Yeah, I think this is really, it kind of helps. Everybody loves data and, kind of looking at it and trying to drill down. So I think this is just a really good slide to at least get in the recording so that folks can take a peek at it afterwards.
And I think a lot of it has to do what you're going to start moving from your files, move up to SharePoint. And I kind of look at each one of these as you build your house, you're kind of building the foundation. Then you're going to build a particular part of the house and put on your roof. You need to look at as you move things to the cloud, you're going to move one thing at a time. You can't run before you walk. So let's get SharePoint up there. All right, let's move your Active Directory up there. Let's get your devices to where they should be. You can't do it all at once. There's too many moving pieces. But over time, and I think Walker alluded to it earlier, if we can find multiple products you're using that we're going to eliminate, you're going to simplify the user in one pane of glass. We're able to secure those users. You actually, in my opinion, in the long run, you're going to see some savings because you're simplifying. We love the word here, standards at PCG. So instead of having 5 or 6 products to do this, you're in one single product. And we feel it's the best way you can secure and collaborate. Anything else on Walker?
100%. Yeah, I was going to say, I really appreciate the time and having me on here today. And a couple people have stuck with us through the whole thing. So appreciate that. I know carving some time out on a Monday morning can be hard, but I think it's really great stuff that we're putting together here. And the PCG team has been a fantastic partner of ours and pleasure to work with. So did want to say that and call it out that thank you for making the investment in technology to spend the time with us here this morning.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And our next workshop, Wendy, I believe, is we're going to revisit Copilot, dive in. What was the date on that again, Wendy?
Sorry about that. That is June 19th, which is a Wednesday.
So we'll send the email up with that. Patrick, any other closing comments from your end?
No, I think honestly, this is the kind of the product SKU that we've been waiting for when we were early on moving some companies to 365 from on-premise Exchange. They tended to look more at that E3 license as kind of, which is is the same cost, correct, Walker?
2023, it's
a little
actually
bit more.
$1 more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't provide, all of the things that I think a small business, small to medium sized business should be looking at. While, including some things that really only apply to enterprise level customers.
Yeah, it's enterprise security and a business package. Yeah.
And one thing we might do another breakfast series soon is, we during the pandemic, we're looking at different VoIP options. And when Microsoft, they purchased Skype and their original VoIP was not well, but we jumped on board 2 years ago and haven't looked back. So not only now, a lot of people could use, Ring Central. They could be using many products that are out there for their VoIP, but now within our Microsoft Teams, now we have a button to do all of our dialing. So now we're even have simplified even more that we can do everything, ring groups, the auto attendant, track my device. So whether my device is at home, my phone, or at work, we now have incorporated the Microsoft Teams, the local and long distance minutes. So we're actually saving money on our bills. That's again another example of incorporating the teams that we're used to doing our collaboration, but now we can actually do our dialing through it as well. But thank you very much. If anyone has more information or would like more information, please reach out to us. We'll let you know. And have a great week. And let's hope the Celtics bring the championship. They want to do it for Bill Kelly, because unfortunately the Rangers didn't make it out of there, Patrick. I don't know.
One more note,
I saw
guys.
that.
The recording will be available once it's published later today, probably by close of business, and that next artificial intelligence, Get Intelligent with AI with Copilot is Wednesday, June 19th at 10. It's not just for customers; it's also for any other folks that are on the call that want to join in and get smart with AI.
Have a great
Thank you,
day.
everyone.
All right,
Thanks,
y'all.
guys.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.